نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الطلاق مرتان فإمساكم بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مما آتيتموهن شيئا إلا أن يخافا ألا يقيما حدود الله فإن خفتم ألا يقيما حدود الله فلا جناح عليهما فيما افتدت به تلك حدود الله فلا تعتدوها ومن يتعد حدود الله فأولئك هم الظالمون فإن طلقها فلا تحل له من بعد حتى تنكح زوجا غيره فإن طلقها فلا جناح عليهما أن يتراجعا إن ظنا أن يقيما حدود الله وتلك حدود الله يبينها لقوم يعلمون. Dear honorable friends, the verses that we have started I'll increase the detention. The verses that have been recited to you and the verses that we had commenced with last week were to do with the rulings of talaq. A couple of rulings were mentioned last week, and in these verses and the verses still to come, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention in more detail with regards to various aspects of talaq, divorce. Before we do the actual translation and the tafseer of these verses, we first of all need to understand the philosophy behind nikah and talaq in Islam. First of all, we all know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Nabi Kareem sallallahu ta'ala wasallam with a pristine guide with regards to every aspect of a person's life, be it his domestic life, his social life, his financial life, his life within the home, outside the home, with friends or foe. With all aspects of life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us guidance with regards how things should be done. In this, certain things have been made halal, certain things have been made haram. Some practices of Jahiliyyah have been eradicated, and some practices which were not harmful to a person's deen and iman, they have been maintained. Prior to Islam, we know there was no such thing as a proper nikah. Either there was no such thing as nikah at all, or if there was nikah, the nikah would be done in a manner which would in reality be against the Islamic way of nikah. Either people didn't do nikah at all and just fulfilled their desires in a haram way, or there were those people who did believe in nikah, but the nikah was also a very strange way. For example, the nikah prevailed during the times of the Arabs wherein the male, he marries as many times as he wants, and he'll divorce as many times as he wants. The female, she has a desire, she has she was utilized more of a merchandise, she would be shared amongst people. There's one form of nikah wherein if the male himself could not produce any children, then the wife, the female, she had a choice of consummating with whoever she wanted to, and then the child would be linked to the actual husband himself. The Persians, according to them, marriage was such, there was no such thing as mahram and ghair mahram. Nobody was haram for anybody, which meant that a father would marry his daughter, the son would marry their mother. This was prevailed amongst the Persians. Brothers and sisters would get married, close, very close, intimate family would also marry each other, and they would even boast upon it. So if the child married his own mother or father, they would boast upon such type of marriages. So there was no guidance at all. And these were the types of marriages that would prevail prior to Islam. So in Islam, we had such thing as nikah. Now nikah itself, we know, is not just an external transaction between a male and a female, because wherever nikah has been mentioned, is been termed as an aqd, as a transaction, because there's great similarities between a normal transaction and that of nikah. In nikah also a mahar is stipulated, and in a normal transaction also a figure, a price is stipulated. So it is a form of transaction. Why is it a transaction? Because when a person makes a transaction with another person, he makes a deal with him, and in that deal they agree that they will follow certain principles, they will be good with each other, they'll be fair with each other, they'll be truthful with each other, and then something may happen wherein then that transaction breaks up. So in nikah also is a form of transaction, where the male and female make a transaction that they're going to remain loyal with each other forever, and that they will be as a partnership. The difference is, however, that a normal transaction can be easily nullified, wherein basically the parties just say, that's it, our transaction, our deal is over, we go our separate ways, and immediately they can go and start off whatever other businesses they want to. But in nikah, the nikah transaction, when it's broken up, also is broken up in a specific method. Now nikah itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained nikah. Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has stressed upon nikah. The reason for this is because this is safeguardance for a person. So nikah isn't just to do with the external form. A person now lives with another person of the opposite sex, obviously not of the same sex, there's no nikah there at all. So John doesn't become halal for Paul, etc. But it is an ibadat. So nikah, although it is termed as a transaction, but nikah itself is an ibadat. Allama ibn Nujaym rahimahullah in his Bahr al-Raik mentions in quite detail with regards to the Islamic position of nikah, and one of the things he mentions is that it is an ibadat, and it is an ibadat which is greater than nafal salat. He says that if a husband spends his time with his wife, he gains more reward in that than performing nafal salat. And the reason he gives behind it is because Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam stressed greatly upon marriage. So marriage is a sunnat, such a sunnat that Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam maintains throughout his life, and he gave a lot of stress upon the importance of marriage. Whereas nafal is just nafal. Sunnat has more importance than that of nafal. A person discards any nafal, he won't be questioned with regards to it, but a person discards sunnat, he may be questioned with regards to it. So the position of a sunnat is much greater than that of a nafal. Hence he mentions that nikah is also an ibadat, and he mentions that in the eyes of the fuqaha, a person gains more reward in spending time with his wife than he does in performing nafal ibadat. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't just made nikah an ibadat, something that is virtuous with regards to deeds, but it is something which obviously a person fulfills his desires in it. As I mentioned, whether it was in Tafseer or one of the Jummahs recently, where Hakim al-Matanwi rahimahullah mentions that the wife dil behlane ki saman hote hai, that the wives Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted the male's wives so that they are there in order to bring enjoyment to the heart of the husbands. So when a male and female gets together in a form of nikah, and they become a means of compassion and love for each other, they remove each other's stress and hardships and difficulties, they share each other's pains and hardships, and in this way man finds great comfort in his wife. The unique nikah system is so great that this is the only system in which two strangers become so close to each other in a correct method. Where you find when the boy and girl get married to each other, the boy may be of a total different country, different language, different background, and the girl is also of different background. And now just because of the nikah, how two total different families get together and become one family. And this union now is such a strong and very strong and firm union between the two. Nikah is also such that you'll find that prior to nikah, those two individuals who are totally haram for each other, just because of a few methods taking place, now they both become halal for each other. Until they both die, they become so halal for each other that nobody else has the same rights than those two with regards the intimacy between the two. That's how halal they become for each other. Two strangers who prior to nikah had no ta'alluq, no connection at all, had no feelings for each other, now immediately after nikah they have so much connection between the two. The boy and the girl prior to marriage, if the boy was told that this girl who lives wherever, she's ill or something happened to her, it wouldn't affect him the least bit. It wouldn't, big deal, so what? It wouldn't affect him the least bit. But immediately after nikah, if he's told to him that the same person has just a slight headache, end of the world for him. How much now it feels to him how things change. Just through the union of nikah, how things change. That is when it's done according to the sunnah. We know our nikahs are such that everything is done prior to nikah, after nikah there's nothing left. The only thing left after nikah now is divorce. This is our nikahs, isn't it? The only thing left now is divorce. Because prior to that they just break up, they couldn't do divorce, you only do divorce after nikah. So that's the only thing that's left, everything else is done. So once nikah is done, they think what is left now, so let's divorce. As you find there's so many cases, and I've dealt with so many cases where it's love marriages, where they've been going out with each other, they've been head over heels, love with each other, not long after the marriage, and now they divorce. Whereas it was supposed to be love marriage. So those people who say no, it has to be a love marriage, boy and girl has to meet and get to know each other beforehand and all these type of things, but you find those are the ones that end up in divorce. Whereas those marriages where boy and girl do not get to know each other, they just meet each other once when it's the time to do so. After that, if there's any communication, it is done via a mahram, etc. That type of nikah you find it lasts forever. Why? Because the blessings of the sunnah is that type of union, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala naturally places love and affection between the two. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions mawaddatan wa rahma, that the purpose of nikah is that love and compassion is created, then a person will find that if he sticks to the sunnah method, he may think to himself, I need to get to know her, at least I need to know who I'm going to live the rest of my life with. She might think the same, I need to know his likes, his dislikes, what type of person it is. We need to at least go out a few times, meet a few times, chat a few times. We need to do these type of things. Otherwise, how are we going to learn to love each other? Whereas if a person, but this is when obviously the boy does go to see the girl, and through his choice he accepts her, and through her choice she accepts. Obviously where it's a forced marriage, you don't expect a forced marriage to work out, obviously, because in Islam there's no such thing as forced marriages. Here is a case wherein the boy sees the girl, he speaks to her for a while, and he'll only say yes if he likes what he saw, or if he likes what he heard. The girl, she also has her own choice. She can say yes or she can decline, she can say no. Out of her own choice, both of them agree to get married to each other. Thereafter, they remain away from each other. So at least there's some form of excitement in when the day of the nikah. So when now the nikah takes place, now all the enjoyment is there, a new adventure, a new venture for them to explore with each other. And you'll find through the barakat of nikah, and you find wherever this type of sunnah nikah does, with proof I can mention to you, that if there's no ta'alluq at all prior to marriage, the moment nikah is done, automatically a lot of love and affection is placed between the two. Whereas there was no connection at all with that person, you only saw them on that one occasion and that's it. But automatically, through the barakat of the nikah being according to sunnat method, there's great union between the two, great love and affection between the two in nikah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, has ordained something as nikah. Now we all know the importance of nikah. In one hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam describes a male and a female who doesn't have a partner in marriage as miskeen. Nabi Kareem mentions that male who doesn't have a wife is a miskeen, that female who doesn't have a husband is a miskeen. Sahaba asked, even if he is rich, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentions that even if he is rich but he doesn't have a wife, he's a miskeen, he's a pauper. And even if she is rich but she doesn't have a husband, she is also a miskeen. This is how Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has described it too. And you find also, whenever there's mention of nikah and marriage and that, and if there's a group of those who are married and those who aren't, you find those who are not married do normally look like miskeens also. And they feel like miskeens because they know that we're not in the club yet. So there's not a smile on their faces you'll find on another person, isn't it? So as true as Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned, they're like miskeens. I remember one ustad of ours also, while she was studying, there were some students who were married, some who were not. So he himself, those who are not married, would look at them and say, "Bichar miskeen hai." They're still miskeen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a beautiful method, has joined a male and female together through the barakat of nikah. When both of them get together, they've got together in a beautiful, in a blessed method, wherein obviously one of the things of nikah is, Nabi mentions that nikah, there should be an elan. Elan means it should be not hidden, but people should know about the nikah. People should be invited, and it's a day of joy and pleasure, not a day of hardship, a day of mourning. Although some may mourn a week or two late, but it shouldn't be that way anyway. So it's a day of great pleasure. People are happy, so much preparations take place, although it should be all within the boundaries obviously. And all these type of things happen, and in this way the male and female become halal for each other. Now as life goes on between the two, obviously there might be a case wherein they find that instead of love and affection being there between the two, things are the opposite. Wherein now a veil is placed over their eyes, wherein the husband now can't see or recognize the qualities, the good characteristics of his wife. Or a veil is placed over the wife wherein she cannot see the good qualities of the husband, due to which now there's great unrest and hardship and difficulties between the two. Or it might become a case wherein both the thoughts and mentality is totally separate to each other. One's on one highway, the other one's on another highway. One wants to reach Allah, go towards Allah, one wants to go towards shaitan. Or they just can't find any compatibility between the two. Now for this also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a way out. Not like other trends, like other religions, wherein once now a person marries, there's no way out at all. Prior to Islam we find this is what was prevailed, that the male would marry, and if he didn't like his wife, he just keep her aside. There would be no way of her freedom for her. Or it would be a case wherein, as we'll be doing in the verses, why these verses were revealed, that there were those who would divorce their wives, and within the iddat period they would take them back again. And then after a while he'd divorce again, take them back, divorce, and in that period he'd divorce her over 100 times. He'd divorce her over 100 times, but he wouldn't release her. Within the iddat he'll just take her back again just to keep her. He wouldn't have any intention of keeping good ties with her, but he would just keep her inside. So this is the type of marriage that was prevailed, the type of system that was prevailed during the times prior to Islam. Many religions also you find wherein they would also be faced wherein if a male and female were together in marriage, then they wouldn't be able to separate from each other. The only way was if one of the two passes away. That would be the only way out. There would be no such thing as divorce. Even amongst the Roman Catholics, there's no such thing as divorce from right. Or the Protestants or something wherein the only time they can divorce is if one dies or if one fornicates, something to that extent. So even in religion also there was no way out. Now Islam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala greatly dislikes talaq. أبغض الحلال is talaq. The most disliked thing, halal thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talaq. The most disliked. It is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dislikes. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also disliked it. In other hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned that never mind Jannat, even the fragrance of Jannat is haram for that female who seeks and who demands a divorce without a valid reason. So divorce is greatly disliked. But at the same time, it hasn't been totally ruled out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has still left the option open for the males and female to separate with each other when things do not work out. But just the way great deal of effort and things took place in the getting together, in the same way talaq, when it occurs, it isn't something that should be just given and just broken off. The marriage is something that is very sacred, a union that is very strong. And that unity, that union should not just be broken off how a person desires. That's why you find with regards to divorce, the right of divorcing has been granted to the male, to the husband. Because his characteristics is different compared to the female. Women are more sensitive, they haste more, their feelings are much stronger than that of a male. A male, he can have more patience, he'll still undertake more hardship than a female, he'll be able to control himself. The nature of a female is such that if the right of divorce was granted to her, and only Allah knows how many times she'll divorce and get married, divorce. As the mood swings and various phases of her life will go, she'll be just divorcing, marrying, and whatever. Any small thing happens and that's it, she would probably be just divorcing the husband. That's why this right hasn't been granted to her. And as we know that they are inferior than men in mentality wise, in intellect wise. So obviously they wouldn't think as hard and plan as much as a male would do at the time. So this right has been granted to the male. But it's been granted to him in such a manner that it isn't a right that he just utilizes whenever he wants. And as well, along with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granting this right to the husband, to the male, He's also granted the female that there are options which she can utilize, which we'll be doing in the verses inshallah, wherein she can also release herself from the marriage. Now this right which the male has is a right which is the last resort, not the first resort, that you divorce and then you try and make things work out. But it is the absolute last resort. That's why the other verses in the Quran which we will do in its time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us great advice that when things do not work out, then the male and female first, they should try and work things out themselves. If things don't work out, they should separate from each other in the house. Not that they move out in the house, one sleeps in a separate room, another in another room. They should separate from each other. Then still if things don't work out, then they should call somebody else, a neutral person, or somebody from the girl side, somebody from the male side. So get somebody from outside, somebody else to come in and try and arbitrate between the two. After all these methods and steps are taken, then still we find that there's no way of things working out. Then only Islam says that now the two should divorce, should separate. So the rights of divorce which have been given is the last step that a person takes. The nikah, the moment a person marries, he shouldn't marry with the intention of divorcing. That he's going to marry and very soon he has the intention already, well things don't work out, let's divorce her. This is not what he should be thinking. At the time of marriage he should be thinking that this is it, this is that we are going to live together until death does us apart. Until then we're going to remain together and we shall work things out at all times. So a person, the last thing, meaning that he shouldn't even think of the thought of divorcing. Divorce should be the last thing in a person's mind. Unfortunately, Shoaib, sit inside. Unfortunately, we find that our case is that any small affair, any small issue that arises, that's the husband is there. Do this, do that. If you don't obey me, then I'll divorce you. I'll divorce you. Do this and I'll divorce you. Go here and I'll divorce you. Do this, I'll divorce you. Every speech, wherever he talks, he's just saying, should I divorce you? Should I divorce you? That's always the first thing on his tongue is divorce. And then what happens is any small thing, and obviously whatever's on the mind, on the thought, that's the first thing that he does. And the last thing that he's supposed to do is the first thing that he does. And then what happens is, as I mentioned to previously, then the two divorce, and after divorcing now they regret, and then they start looking around and searching for various other fatwas, or they might try and con the mufti and change things about, thinking that as long as we get the fatwa then everybody will be quiet. We just showed people, look, we've got a fatwa from the mufti. What they don't realize is they'll turn things around, and according to that the mufti just gives his fatwa according to what's presented to him. He'll give his fatwa, but that doesn't still make you halal for each other. If you, by calling the mufti, and this is, people go to those extent, if you call the mufti and he gives a fatwa that yes, you are halal for each other, the divorce hasn't taken place, but then too they can't call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they still will be haram for each other. So the talaq is something that is the absolute last resort. Talaq also, when it is given, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advises us that talaq should also be given in a pacific method. Just the way the nikah was done in a pacific method, talaq should also be given in a pacific method. When such a great union has taken place, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought two people together, if now they do have to separate, it should be done also in a good method. In a method wherein everybody is pleased, Allah and His Rasul is also pleased. In another hadith it mentions that when a husband and wife divorces each other, when the divorce is given, it shakes the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how disliked it is in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time we do need to realize is that Islam, which has moderation in it, doesn't oppress anybody, and it doesn't mean that now a person shouldn't divorce at all when things aren't working out. At times it is better that both go their own ways. If the husband has no feelings for his wife anymore, there's no love and affection between the two, because obviously there still needs to be love and affection between the two, understanding there should be some form of compromise, understanding between the two, then only is there hope that both of them can remain together. If now both of them don't love each other, or if from the two one absolutely doesn't want to live with the other at all, then there's no way you can force a person to live with somebody if they dislike that person, if they don't want to live with that person. So Islam gives us the way out. The best thing is that instead of the husband now, he doesn't like his wife anymore, he finds some problems in her, some issues in her, instead of him now marrying somebody else, he got his new wife now, and she just remains there as a work in the house. She now is not free to do anything herself. Islam says that you can now divorce, separate with each other, but the separation should also be done in a pacific method. So Islam also, who has advised us how to get together, has also advised us how we should separate from each other. So when talaq is done, talaq should be given in a pacific method. Now before we do all these verses, let's give you an overall view of the different types of talaq and how talaq takes place, and then inshallah we'll go into the tafseer of the verses itself. So first thing we know is that talaq is something that is disliked in Islam. Talaq is the last resort that a person should resort to. And also we know that talaq is something which is halal. It isn't haram, it is halal. And if it comes to it, then there is no harm in a person divorcing. But now when a person divorces, he should do it in a pacific method. As we find that there are three types of talaq. One is talaqul ahsan, which is the best form of talaq. And that is wherein the husband divorces the wife in her clean period, wherein no form of sexual intercourse took place, and he gives the wife just one divorce. This is talaqul ahsan, the best form of talaq. And this is a form of talaq that Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam advised and told the Sahaba to do. If anybody did it contrary to that, Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would become greatly angered with it, which I'll mention later on. So talaqul ahsan is where a person divorces the wife, first of all, in her clean period. The reason for this is so it doesn't lengthen her period. Because if he divorces her while she's on a period, then she has to wait for that period to end, and then once the cleanliness comes, after that she has to still wait for another 3 periods to go by. So this increases and lengthens her period. So it shouldn't be done when she's in haste. It should be done in a period where she's clean, no sexual intercourse takes place, and only one divorce, one talaq is given. So at least while she's in a waiting period, the husband still has control. He can still take her back just by making raj'at, just by taking her back in his nikah. This is talaqul ahsan, the best way of divorcing. The second is talaqul hasan, which is also a good form of divorce, but not as good as the first one. The first one is ahsan, this is hasan. Talaqul hasan is wherein a person divorces his wife 3 times, but in 3 separate clean periods. So he divorces his wife once in 1 clean period, and then after that, once the cycle goes, then next clean period he divorces a 2nd time, and then in the next clean period he divorces her for a 3rd time, where no sexual intercourse took place. This is talaqul hasan. This is also permissible, however it isn't as good as the first one, because in the first one, at least after divorcing her once, even if her iddat comes to an end, she's halal, she can do what she wants, but they can still get together with each other by just simply redoing the nikah. In the second one, he still has time to take her back, but after he issues a 3rd, then obviously he can't now without doing halala, which will also come in the verses I've recited to you. The third one is talaqul bid'ah, the talaq which is greatly disliked. And a person who divorces in this manner will also be sinful. And this talaq has 3 stages, 3 types, which are greatly disliked. One is that a male divorces the wife while she is in her period, in her menstruation period. This has been greatly disliked by Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wherein he says that what you are doing is you're lengthening her iddat, her waiting period, so you're making it difficult for her. So a person will become sinful if he divorces the wife while she is in haze. Whereas a lot of fuqaha mentioned that a person should make raj'at, he should take her back and then divorce her in a cleanliness to abstain from becoming sinful. Although a person who does divorce his wife in this period, her divorce does take place. A person shouldn't mean that because it's disliked, means that it's nullified. There are those who interpret it this way. This is incorrect. Whoever divorces his wife in that period she will be divorced. The second category is wherein a person divorces the wife in that cleanliness in which they had sexual relationship with each other. Why this is disliked is because in that period when they had sexual relationship, there is a great chance that she might have conceived. And then if he divorces her in that same purity, then what happens is her iddah is going to be lengthened. He knows now they're going to divorce, or he's deciding to divorce her. So now if he divorces her in the same that in which he meets with her, there's great chance that if she conceives, then now her iddah is going to be lengthened till the time she gives birth. And at the same time, there's great disheartening for the wife also if a male divorces her in the same period of time where he also met with her. So this is greatly disliked. The third is wherein a person issues 3 talaqs together, either separately or 3 together in one gathering. This is greatly disliked by Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On one occasion, somebody came and said regards a person that has divorced his wife 3 times in one go. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was sat at the time, stood up out of great anger and said that, do you still mess around, play with the Quran whilst I'm amongst you? That the Quran has disliked this, and when we do the tafseer, we find out how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wording of Allah shows us that this is greatly disliked. When He says that you meddle with the Quran whilst I'm amongst you, already you're messing about with the Quran and doing things which are such greatly disliked. On seeing the anger of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, another Sahabi stood up and said that, Ya Rasulullah, shall I chop his head off? Shall I finish him off, seeing the dislike that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam had in it? So to divorce the wife full 3 times in one gathering, this is greatly disliked by Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a person will be sinful. Now we have to realize that all the fuqaha, well, all the sahaba, the tabi'een, the fuqaha, the 4 great imams, are all unanimous that if a person divorces his wife 3 times in one gathering, she is divorced. It is only the ghair muqallideen who have come out with their own interpretations, wherein they say that 3 divorce in one gathering equals only 1. Allah knows best where they got the mathematics from. This is incorrect. The Sahaba were unanimous, the Tabi'een were, and all 4 A'immah are unanimous on this point. The person gives 3 talaqs in one gathering, all 3 are done. And today you find that those who follow an imam, follow things and do things correctly according to the hadith and sunnah, when they also issue talaq in this way, and when they can't find any hope at all, and then they run to some ghair muqallid, and then he'll say to them, no, it's only one talaq, and then they get hope in it. So that's what they do when they can't find anywhere else. They'll go to the deviant ones and get deviant fatwas from them. So, and there's great proof to this. We can go into great proof also on this later on if you want to. There's proof with regards, and their proofs are just baseless more than anything else. So 3 talaqs given in one gathering equals 3. Not the 3 given equals 1 all of a sudden. 3 is 3. Okay. So these were a few masail with regards talaq. Now when a person divorces his wife just once, he has the option of taking her back. When he takes her back, he still has the option of another 2 divorces. If he divorces her for the second time, he can still take her back. He has one option left. But now if he divorces her 3 times, whether it's separately or whether it's collectively, once 3 talaqs are issued, now he doesn't have the same rights of taking her back as he would if he had just given her 1 or 2 divorces. The ruling then is that she has to go through halala. Halala is wherein the wife, now she has to marry another person, the marriage has to be consummated, and then for some valid reason he divorces her or he passes away. She now completes her iddat. After her iddat, now she can remarry the first husband if they want to get together again. This is through the means of halala, and these verses will be coming very soon, which we'll mention in detail then. So this, in brief, was the philosophy of talaq, the purpose of talaq, and the importance of nikah in Islam. So just the way nikah is done in a specific method, in a specific way, talaq also takes place in a specific way. And the verses that I have recited to you, there's quite a bit of detail etc. to it. And today is one of those nights where I need to depart early. So I've just mentioned to you in sort of a summary with regards to the verses. So now inshallah next week we will do the translation and the tafseer, and especially the various wordings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in these verses with regards indicating towards talaq should be only given once or twice, the dislike of 3 talaqs. If talaq is given, then the other option of khula, which is there, that will also be mentioned. Khula is wherein the wife herself pays for herself to be divorced. That will also be mentioned in the verses, and also in detail that of halala.
Can we just ask a question before you disappear? If a sister was married, but the marriage was never consummated, but yet they met obviously on a one-to-one basis, she'd still have to go through the waiting period. 3 months. Yeah, that's what I thought. The bin's falling around. It's filled.
نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الطلاق مرتان فإمساكم بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مما آتيتموهن شيئا إلا أن يخافا ألا يقيما حدود الله فإن خفتم ألا يقيما حدود الله فلا جناح عليهما فيهما افتدت به تلك حدود الله فلا تعتدوها ومن يتعد حدود الله فأولئك هم الظالمون فإن طلقها فلا تحل له من بعد حتى تنكح زوجا غيره فإن طلقها فلا جناح عليهما أن يتراجعا إن ظنا أن يقيما حدود الله وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ يُبَيِّنُهَا لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. Respectful honorable friends, the verses that I've just recited to you are the same verses that were recited last week. In last week's session, we had done a summary of the verses, or rather a detail of talaq itself. So as you gather, these verses are to do with talaq. In today's session, we just need to go over the tafseer of these verses that were recited to you last week. First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that at-talaqu marratan فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ. The talaq, here referring to the revocable one, talaq raj'i, is marratan, twice. Not two, but the word is twice. فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, or either you take them in a good manner according to the customs, أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ, or you let them go, mean the females, بِإِحْسَانٍ, in a good manner. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ أَن تَأْخُذُوا مِمَّا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ شَيْئًا إِلَّا أَن يَخَافَا أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ. And it is not halal for you that you take from them that which you have given them, illa, unless you fear that you, Allah yuqima, that you will not be able to establish the boundaries of Allah, the laws of Allah. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ, if you fear that you will not be able to establish the boundaries of Allah, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيهِمَا افْتِدَاءٍ بِهِ, then there will be no harm upon you in that which فِيهِمَا افْتِدَاءٍ بِهِ, which you have given them, referring to the dowry, the meher. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا, that is the boundaries of Allah, and do not transgress. وَمَنْ يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ, whoever transgresses the boundaries of Allah, those are the ones who have done wrong, who have oppressed. In this verse, the first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us is that at-talaqu marratan, that talaq raj'i is marratan, is twice. Now, as we have previously done, we know that the best form of giving divorce and talaq is that of the talaq raj'i, wherein a person gives only one talaq. Now, previously, before this verse was revealed, the custom was the people would divorce their wives and take them back as many times as they wanted to, over 100 times also. On one occasion, a Sahabi said to his wife that you will never be freed as I have divorced you, and then before your time finishes, I will make ruju, I'll take you back. So in this way she went and she complained to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam that this is what he says. On this verse was revealed that at-talaqu marratan, that a person cannot divorce his wife as many times as he wants, divorces her and then takes her back, divorces her, takes her back as many times as he wants. But now the final amount had been mentioned. He says that talaq is marratan, twice. فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, after you have given it twice divorce, meaning once and then another time, فَإِمْسَاكٌ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, then you should take her back, بِمَعْرُوفٍ, according to the custom, أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ, or let her go in a good manner. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, referring to the talaq raj'i, here mentions that talaq is marratan. Talaq is twice only. Here it says marratan. In it is a lesson, and that is by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying talaq marratan, it means that most that a person should divorce his wife is only two. And that also it says here marratan, twice. Not, it doesn't say atalaqani marratani, atalaqani as in two talaqs, but it just says talaq twice, which shows us that talaq should be given once only. And then if things don't work out, then on a later date the second one should be given. Not that talaq should be given twice together. So marratan, the words of the Quran here in Arabic, marratan means twice, meaning once and then later on you give the other one. Thereafter, after the 2 talaqs have been given, in these there is an option. After the first one, he can take his wife back. After the second one too, he can take his wife back. After the second one has been given, then he's got 2 options. فَإِمْسَاكُمْ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, either he keeps his wife and he treats her properly, or أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ, he lets her go in a good manner. This is the 3rd talaq. A Sahabi once asked Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala only mentions marratan twice. What about the 3rd one? Nabi Kareem Sallallahu mentioned أَوْ تَسْرِيحٌ بِإِحْسَانٍ refers to the 3rd one, meaning give her 2, if then after that either keep her or let her go nicely. That refers to the 3rd one which Nabi Kareem Sallallahu mentions, which indicates that a person shouldn't go to the extreme of giving all 3 talaqs. So the wording of Allah, where Allah Himself says at-talaqu marratan, it doesn't say at-talaqu thalathun, the talaq is 3. It doesn't say that at all. It just says twice, and after that let her go if you don't want, if you think things cannot work out. But nowhere at all do you find that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala makes mention of 3 talaqs. Knowing that 3 talaqs are bad for a person, and 3 talaqs were greatly disliked by Allah and His Rasul, so Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala Himself doesn't mention that talaq should be given 3 times. وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ, and then the word here also, as I previously mentioned, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says that after the 2 divorce, imsak bima'ruf, either you reconcile and keep her. But if you keep her bima'rufin, with goodness, ma'ruf balai, with goodness, keep her, but keep her in a good manner. Not that you just take her back so that now she can't remarry somebody else, she can't gain her freedom, but take her back in a way that she is pleased and she is happy in the surroundings that she is in. And if you know that things cannot work out between the 2, then tasrihum bi-ihsan, let her go in a nice manner. Letting her go, مَتِّيُهُنَّ بِالْمُوسِي قَدْرُهُ بِالْمُقْدَرِ. Elsewhere in the Quran, Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala mentions that when you divorce and you totally separate, then a person, according to his means, should give some saman, he should give some goods also to the wife. Give her a few sets of clothing, a few necessities of her, give that, so at least you got together in a good manner, so you're departing also in a good manner. So at least in this manner, there is no conflicts that go on and on after the divorce takes place. Unfortunately, our case is such that when divorce takes place, then we find that the whole families and families now at war with each other. And we know, as we mentioned last week, that one of the ills of talaq is that obviously friendship and relationships break, so, which is one of the harms of it. But if talaq is done, when it comes to a stage wherein we know there's no other way at all but divorce, and everybody accepts that that's the only best solution to come to, then it should be given in a good manner. So at least after that, if family from one side or the other, if they so happen they're going somewhere and they meet each other, then they're not fighting in the streets there. They're not effing and being and swearing and all these type of things. So at least they say salam kalam, and they know, at least they know that things didn't work out, so in a good manner they separated. Otherwise we find you have so many cases wherein divorce takes place and one family is now bitter with the other family, one family now speaks ill of the other and starts spreading rumors with regards them, the other family starts spreading rumors with regards them. Or then what happens is, if it so happens that the boy now wants to get married to somebody else, or the girl wants to get married to somebody else, and the previous family get to know about it, and they make sure that these things should not happen, shouldn't go ahead, they make the most of things, shouldn't go ahead. This is how things are. Whereas Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala says that you got together in a good manner, separate in a nice manner. And if in future it so happens that somebody asks you your opinion with regards the girl, then give a good opinion. If there was in your mind there was nothing wrong, speak the truth and not speak ill with regards the family or the girl, etc. These are the beautiful teachings of Islam, that even in such occasions, ihsan, goodness, should be given priority. Further, another injunction linked to it, it says, وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ, it is not halal for you, أَن تَأْخُذُوا, that you take مِمَّا آتِيتُمُهُنَّ شَيْئًا, a thing even of that which you gave them. Means, now if the husband and wife decide to separate, now the husband and his family can't demand that give me back all the jewelry and all the rings and all the pots and pans and everything, give it back to me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it's not halal for you to take it back. Why? Because you had given it to them and that now belongs to her. And as we know in our customs are when the marriage, the poor husband becomes a pauper and bankrupt before the wedding already. Because the expensive jewelry, the expensive gifts and all this type of things that you get beforehand. Beforehand. Now a lot of times what happens when divorce takes place, they want all these things back. They expect that a girl now gives all her, what you call jannas, all her jewelry and all the rings and everything back to the husband. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, La yahillu lakum. It's not permissible for you that you take anything. It says here, shay'an. What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you take mimma ataytumuhunna, from that which you have given, and then on top of that he brings the word shay'an, that even a small thing, anything at all, even just a small cup, saucepan, do not take it back at all. What's hers is hers. She goes home with that, and you take what's yours. إِلَّا أَن يَخَافَا أَلَّا يُقِيمَ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ. Now there's an exception here. It says here, unless you fear Allah yuqima hudud Allah, that you will not be able to establish the boundaries, the order of Allah. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ, if you fear Allah yuqima hudud Allah, that you will not be able to establish the law of Allah, then فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, then there is no harm upon the two, فِيهِ مَفْتَدَتْ بِهِ, to give by which she can free herself. Now this is one exception, which we call khula. When the husband and wife divorce, it is not permissible for the husband to take anything back. And that also includes the mahar, the dowry that he had given her. One thing very important about the dowry also is that the dowry is the rights of the female. Although it so happens that normally, according to the weddings that we have, the groom's father will give the meher to the bride's father. Instead of him giving it, it so happens that after the nikah, the father will give it to the girl's father. So they give it to each other. A lot of times what happens is that the bride's father, when he gets it, he puts it into his pocket. And now he thinks that that meher is his. And now it's his property, belongs to him, given to him, it's his. Whereas what he doesn't realize is that the mahar is the rights of the bride of the woman. It doesn't belong to anybody else at all. It is her rights which the husband gives. Although the husband's father, somebody else can pay the mahar on his behalf. The mahar can be given either immediately or it can even be a qarz, it can be a loan also. That you'll give it later on. However, it is the right of the wife, nobody else can take it. The wife's brothers or the wife's father, they have no rights over the mahar whatsoever. And the mahar also, when it's given, dear friends, it should be a respectable amount. We find that the Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he gave Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha away to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anha, he didn't just fix any small price, that just, okay, a cup of water, a cup of milk or something, but there was a decent amount, which we now call the Mahr Fatimi, which in today's times could be easily about 200, 250 pounds, etc. Which is a bit of a reasonable amount. It should be a reasonable amount. Not that a person just says, take 50 pounds or 101 pounds, Allah knows where the one came from. 101 pounds. Yeah, in our custom somehow from India, Pakistan, 152 isn't 152 pounds. For some reason that has been stipulated 151 pounds. And it so happens that people hear it so often, so whenever the nikah, the agreement says, they all just quote the same thing, because they're always hearing it elsewhere, so they all quote that. Whereas the ideal is Mahr Fatimi. Find out from the jewelers how much it is, because it obviously changes according to the gold, price of gold, etc. And if a person, as long as he can afford it, if he can afford it, then he should try and give Mahr Fatimi. So it's at least a respectable amount. Another person just gives his daughter away for such a cheap price. So it shouldn't be just the standard 101 pounds. at least a decent. But if somebody can't afford it, then Islam is also easy. It doesn't make it so difficult for a person. You just give £5 or so. That's also sufficient if a person cannot afford it. And it shouldn't be extremes either. Just recently I performed a nikah here. Many people were not here at the time, and the meher was £15,000. When it says 15, I said 15 what? I said 15 grand. £15,000 की निकाह यहाँ पे एक मरतबा हुई थी. मेहर 15,000, 15,000 pounds. So I just looked at him. Obviously it's his business, it's his not mine, nothing to do with me. His business. And just I looked at him and he said, well, that's how he's saying to me, that's how he goes today. Things are not cheap today. So I thought maybe she's made out of gold or something. Then I asked him, is that cash? I'd ask her, is that cash or what? Not needing a loan. I said, no, I'll be giving it for cash. He didn't have it on him one day. It's a pity I should have given a bit of our leaflets, but we need some money also. Just recently, if you don't believe me, if you open the nikah register, it's written there £15,000. So the mahar is the rights of the wife, of the bride. The father should later on give it to his daughter, not that he keeps it with him. And once she has it, that's it. It's hers. It's up to her what she does with it. The husband cannot take it back. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions one exception, and that is now, if there is a case wherein the husband and wife do not get on with each other, or the wife thinks to herself that she cannot fulfill the rights of the husband. For some reason she no more respects him, she doesn't like him, she can't live with him, and now she fears Allah yuqima hududullah, you fear that you cannot establish the law of Allah. In those occasions, then it says that it is permissible for the two, that the wife then frees herself, wherein she now pays the meher back to the husband, on which then he gives her and he issues her the talaq. This is what we call khula. Khula, which is the rights of the wife, that if she finds that the husband is not willing to divorce her, then she can ask him for a divorce on the basis that La yuqima hudud Allah. This is the basis, but where she fears now that she cannot fulfill the rights of the husband. Otherwise, as we've done previously, Nabi Karim mentions that female who asks and demands a divorce without a reason, then never mind Jannat, even the fragrance of Jannat becomes haram for her. Here it is wherein she fears that she'll now violate the laws of Allah, and where she'll fear now she'll become sinful if she doesn't see to the rights of the husband. And obviously if the wife, if she's having problems with the husband is oppressing her, she doesn't have any love and affection towards the husband, she might find it difficult, obviously, to see to his rights. Then it is permissible for her to give back the mahar in lieu for divorce. On one occasion, a Sayyidina Thabit bin Qais radiallahu ta'ala an came to Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Well, his wife came to Nabi Karim sallallahu ta'ala sallam during the time of Fajr Salah, and she was waiting outside his door. Thabit bin Qais bin Shaman, his name was. So his wife came. Nabi Karim sallallahu asked who it was, to which she said, it's Habiba bint Sahal. Nabi Karim sallallahu asked her, what need do we have? Upon which she said that there's nothing wrong with him, but I fear that I cannot fulfill his rights. Nabi Karim sallallahu said to her, do you have anything that he has given you? She says, yes, I do. So he called Sayyidina Thabit radiallahu ta'ala and told him, khudha, take it from her and give her the divorce. In another hadith he mentions, in another narration, Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked her, do you have the garden that he gave? He had given her a garden as mahar. She asked, Nabi Karim asked her, that do you still have the garden that he gave you? She said yes, to which Nabi Karim told her to give it back to him, upon which he then gave the divorce. So this is the ruling of khula. So khula is wherein the wife can ask for a divorce, but on condition now she pays for it. Paying means now she gives back whatever he gave, or she gives back the mahar that he had given her. That is the only exception wherein the husband can take anything back from the person, from what he had given to her. And on a general rule, besides the occasion of nikah, any gift that a person gives to another person, you should not take it back. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentions that the example of that person who gives a gift to somebody and then asks for it back is like a dog that vomits and then eats the vomit again. So how low that is that a person pukes and then eats it again. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave that example to a person who gives somebody a gift, or you give somebody a hadiah, a gift, just like that, and then you break up or something happens around, and then you remember 50 odd years ago you gave them a watch or gave them something, I want that watch back, I want that back, I want that money back that I gave you. That shouldn't be the case. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions that it is not halal for you that you take from that which you gave them, illa an yakhafa, but you fear Allah yuqima hudud Allah, that you not be able to establish the laws of Allah. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَ هُدُودَ اللَّهِ, if you fear that you will not be able to establish the law of Allah, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, then there is no harm on the two, فِيهِ مَفْتَدَتْ بِهِ, that the wife, she may free herself from it, she may give the mahr, and by which she can now be freed from it. تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا. So beautiful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that this is the boundaries. These are the laws of Allah. فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا, do not transgress. So clearly Allah Ta'ala mentions, knowing that talaq normally is, we hear a case of messy divorces. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the time of divorce, obviously tempers are high, and all things are not as good as it should be, smooth, and people are emotionally also high, upset, whatever. So all types of things can take place. A person's emotions, a person's anger can also take over him. I remember on one occasion, there's a speaker, Marhum Qari Hanif of Multan Rahimullah, in one of his talks he mentions how wherein somebody came to him, mentioned to him that somebody gave divorce to his wife out of anger, and asked him, does divorce take place in anger? On which he mentioned that if anybody gives his wife divorce, does he give his wife divorce in pyar and mohabbat? If he divorces his wife, he's going to divorce in love, in anger anyway. So who gives his wife pyar and mohabbat in nice loving way? He says that, oh my dear beloved wife, I think now I should give you divorce, in a nice loving love letter he gives the divorce. So jo talaq dega wo gusse mein dega. Whoever gives talaq, he gives it in gussa anyway. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, despite whatever emotions, Tilka hududullah, this is the boundaries, the laws of Allah. Do it accordingly, do not transgress, do not take the rights of another person. So this is for all those people who go to court for divorces and do things via court. Tilka hududullah. The hudud is that the male cannot take anything back from her. If she demands the nikah, she has to give the divorce, she has to give her mahr away back to him. Otherwise it's not permissible that the things go to court and the wife now takes things that belongs to the husband, or the husband takes what belongs to her, etc. Tilka hududullah fala ta'taduha, do not transgress. وَمَنْ يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that whoever transgresses the laws of Allah, the boundaries of Allah, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ, they are the ones who have oppressed, they are the ones who have done wrong. Which means they are the ones who are doing wrong and oppressing with regards to whoever they have taken the rights from. And if they are punished on the day of resurrection for it, they are punished because they were the ones who were the wrongdoers. Not that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws are oppressing. It is not the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are oppressing, but it is mankind himself or herself that oppresses upon each other. Further, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention towards another ruling. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا. Now previously it says الطلاق مرتان. Talaq is twice. After that either فَإِمْسَاكٌ or let her go. So 2 divorces. Then it says here فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا. Then if you divorce her. Now this then refers to talaq marratan. That after the 2 talaqs, if then also a person divorces her for the 3rd time. So throughout Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't even use the word thrice. But he says فَإِن, thus if, meaning that hopefully a person wouldn't. But if طَلَّقَهَا, you do divorce her, here now it means the 3rd divorce, فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ, she will not be halal for him مِن بَعْدُ, after that, حَتَّى تَنْكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرًا, until she does not marry a husband another. These are the literal words first, because it's very important, the wordings here. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا, then if he divorces her, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, then there is no harm upon the two, أَن يَتَرَاجَعَا, that they reconcile, they get together, إِن ظَنَّا, if they think أَن يُقِيمَ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ, that they can establish the laws of Allah. So here now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the ruling of halala. And this takes place wherein a person now divorces his wife for the third time. So he says, فَإِن, if. And this fa comes for tarahi, which means for the third, for later. Meaning that after the two, if even after that he divorces her, فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ, now they are not halal for each other at all. مِن بَعْدُ, after تَنْكِهَا زَوْجًا غَيْرًا, until she marries another person. This which we call halala. The ruling of halala is that if a husband divorces his wife 3 times, either if it's done 3 times in one gathering, or if it's done 3 different times over a period of time, now she's regarded to be mughallaza, which means now she's totally haram for him. They cannot just redo the nikah or take her back. She has to now do halala. The ruling of halala is that the one that has been divorced, the wife, she now has to marry another person, and once she's married that person, a requisite is that the nikah has to be consummated. Her new husband must have sexual intercourse with her, and after that, if he divorces her for any reason or he passes away, then only is it permissible for her after her iddat to get married to her first husband. Otherwise, it is not permissible at all. Now in it the ruling is that not just nikah should take place, but after nikah, the relationship must have been consummated. Sexual intercourse is a requisite for halala to take place. Now first of all, we need to understand the reason behind this. The reason behind halala is so that a man, when he thinks of the consequences, if he does think of it, which normally he doesn't until afterwards, then at least that will stop him from issuing the 3 divorces. Because then he knows for himself that if I now want to get back to my wife, look what she has to do, what all the process, and who, even the thought of a person who dislikes the thought of his wife obviously marrying somebody else, and then the nikah has to be consummated. So at least this thought should stop him from issuing all 3 divorces. So it is as if it is a punishment for the male who then doesn't abide by the laws of Allah, and if he displeases Allah and His Rasul, as we've done previously. Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, news reached him that a person had divorced his wife 3 times. Nabi Kareem stood up out of anger, and he said that, how is it that whilst I'm still around you and alive, that you start meddling with the Quran and you take the Quran for a joke? On seeing the anger of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, another Sahabi asked, Ya Rasulullah, should I go and finish him off? Because they thought that maybe he's become a kafir now because of the dislike on the face of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So it showed that he greatly disliked this. So a person, if he thinks of the consequences, hopefully that would stop him from actually issuing the 3 divorces. But as I mentioned previously, nobody thinks of the consequences at the time. Nobody asks a mufti before divorce, if I divorce my wife in this way, then does she have to do halal or not, or what will happen, how can we become halal for each other or not? But only after divorce everything is done, and then he asks the mufti, so what do we do now? And then he says halala, and so sometimes say, okay, so just get married and that's it. More than that in it. And then you find how then reality hits them in the face then. So this is the reason for halala. In halala, just the fact that they get married to each other is not sufficient at all. Sexual intercourse should take place. Now obviously the fuqaha have gone into detail with regards, does it mean that, to what extent? The extent is just that amount wherein the male organ penetrates the female, and to that extent by which ghusl becomes farz. To completely fulfill the desire, that's not a requisite. Ejaculation is also not a requisite. just the entering of the organ, the head of the organ inside the vagina, which makes ghusl wajib upon a person, that amount is the requisite for halala to take place. If that amount is done, halala can take place, otherwise not. The words of Allah itself says, hatta tankiha, until she marries. Tankiha does nikah. Zawjan, husband, ghayrahu, besides him. The word tankiha refers to intercourse. Elsewhere in the Quran also, the word nikah, tankih, has been used, but it refers not to the nikah taking place, but it refers to the consummation of the nikah. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't say, because there's a repetition. If you regard tankiha to mean just nikah itself, then zawjan, husband. So obviously when a person does nikah, the man is a husband. So he says here, take another husband. So that shows you that when you take another husband, nikah has already taken place. Otherwise it would just be until she marries another man. That would have been sufficient. But here it says tankiha and the word zawjan, husband. So both words have been repeated, which shows zawjan already refers that nikah has taken place, and tankiha means that the consummation takes place ghayrahu, besides him, meaning besides the husband itself. There is one authentic narration which is quite well known with regards halala, wherein one sahabiya whose name was Rifa'a, this sahabiya, she was the wife of Sayyidina Rifa'a. She came to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam on one occasion and mentioned that Rifa'a had divorced her, and thereafter she married Abdullah bin Zubair. Some mentioned that his name was Zubair and some say it was Zabir. There's a difference of opinion with regards the correct name. So on one occasion she came to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq was there, and another third Sahabi whose name I can't recall was also there. And then to which she complained to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To which she said that, Ya Rasulullah, I have been divorced from Rifa', and thereafter I have married Abdullah bin Zubair. However, I find that Abdullah bin Zubair cannot consummate our nikah. She complained of his impotency. And the words, she didn't utilize any words. Look at the wisdom. What she did is, she took the corner of her garment and she referred and she went like this. She made a sign this way, which is more than enough. So in this beautiful fashion, she gave her message forward to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The third Sahabi who was there told Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq Allahu ta'ala an, to tell her to be quiet. What is she mentioning in front of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam smiled and he said to her that, do you wish to go back to Rifa'? Is that what you're trying to say? What you're trying to say is that Rifa' divorced you and this is the condition of Abdullah, but so you'd like to get back to Rifa'. Is this what you are saying? She said yes. Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that you can't do so until tazuqi usaylatuka, until you do not taste his pleasure and he does not taste your pleasure. The word usayl actually means honey. Until he doesn't taste, you do not taste his honey and he does not taste your honey, which refers to nothing but intercourse itself. This is how Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied to her. Look at the beauty of the reply of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of the wisdom of this, the wife of Rifa' radiallahu ta'ala anha, her wisdom as well, and also with regards, it wasn't a taboo subject, and at the same time she came and she put her point forward to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Neither did Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam shy away either. But the other Sahabi, obviously out of his modesty, felt that it wasn't appropriate that she should talk in this manner in front of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam just smiled, and he himself said to her, well, is this, because obviously there might be something else. So he himself clarified that, is this what you mean to? Some mentioned that it wasn't her clothing, it was just a string, a small piece of string she showed. These are according to various devices. Either she took a small string from her garment and showed that, and some things she actually just showed the garment itself in this fashion. So this is halala. So this hadith and all the fuqaha, everybody is unanimous to the point that halala has to take place in this manner, wherein sexual intercourse should take place. And then also the wife should be given divorce naturally, due to some difference of opinion between them, something should happen and then he divorces her as would have, or that then he passes away, then she completes her iddat. After she's completed her iddat, now she can get back to her husband. So since here, فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ, if he divorces her, referring to the third divorce. Now something that's very, very important is that although Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam disliked the giving of 3 divorces, it doesn't mean that it's haram, that it's not valid. Those who are in a misconception that because it was disliked, that it's not that 3 divorces equals only 1. 3 divorces equals 3. So although Nabi Kareem disliked it, and all the Aimma are unanimous that it is something which is greatly disliked, whoever divorces his wife 3 times in one gathering, collectively he will be sinful, but they are all unanimous also that the talaq will fall. There are those who misinterpret things, and there are those who just do things looking for excuses, but they're all unanimous on this aspect. And there's so many other hadiths, there's books written by people to refute the fact, the other side of the opinion where 3 talaqs equals only 1. There's only one occasion wherein, and the hadith that they take is wherein on one occasion a Sahabi radiallahu ta'ala had given his wife divorce. When he divorced his wife, he gave the words battatun. He mentioned the words battatun. Now, according to the Arabs at the time, the word battatun didn't mean 3 divorce, it just means divorce. But in their environment, it was used also to mean 3 divorces. So what happened is, in one narration mentioned that he used the word batta, and then he was asked by Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, what do you mean from it? And there are those who have just taken the meaning of batta to be automatically 3 divorces. So because now it's a word which now it depends, it's not a clear word. If somebody clearly says that I've divorced my wife times 3 times divorce, then you don't ask him what do you mean by that. Or do you mean 1, or do you mean 2, or do you mean 3? If he said it 3 times, he meant once, you don't ask him, you mean 2 or 3 times. But the word battatun doesn't mean 3 divorces, but it's just used. So obviously it can refer to only 1, or it could refer to only 3. Hence on this Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said to him that take her back. On this people now have taken it to be that Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had made it permissible. And that's where you find that Sayyidina Ibn Abbas Radiallahu Ta'ala mentions in a hadith that during the time of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq and while Sayyidina Umar Radiallahu Ta'ala, if somebody divorced his wife 3 times, he had the option of taking her back. But afterwards, during the time of Sayyidina Umar Farooq Radiallahu Ta'ala, he made ijma, unanimous opinion, which none of the Sahaba then objected to, the 3 divorces would be classified as 3 divorces. Now this doesn't mean that prior to this it was permissible. It is very, very important to understand that this ruling of Sayyidina Umar Farooq was because of a specific reason. And that is, during the time of the Sahaba, there were occasions wherein a person would divorce his wife once, but out of emphasis, he might mention it 3 times. Meaning, he wanted to divorce his wife only once, but he might say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, but for the intention of emphasis. During the time of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we know that the Sahaba had a lot of fear of Allah, a lot of taqwa, and were truthful to the point. Hence, if they were asked at the time, that what would you mean by it? They were honest, I mean 3 divorces. Or they would be honest that I mean only 1, and the rest were for emphasis. And nobody would object to it, knowing the amount of taqwa that they had. However, as we know, after the demise of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, as time went by, people also changed. And Sayyidina Umar Farooq Radiallahu Ta'ala, who we know had great insight to things and a lot of wisdom, started realizing that people are misusing this ruling. So then what started happening is that people would divorce their wives 3 times, but then when asked, they would say, no, I meant it only once. They would say, I meant it only once, the rest was just for emphasis, they would start using. So it meant that during the time of Nabi Karim Sallallahu, they had the option where they would be asked that what did you mean by it. If they gave 3 but meant 1, it would be taken as they meant 1. But afterwards people now, and this is exactly what happens today's time, wherein the wife says for sure he said 3 and the husband now is regretting, he'll say no, I only said 1 or 2. So many cases you have of this nature, wherein afterwards they change things. And obviously, person, if they're going to come to Mufti and speak over the phone, you're not just going to get confused and forget things. So you remember yourself in the first phone call, this is what they mentioned, in the second phone call, this is now what they mentioned, things are changing. So Sayyidina Umar Farooq realizes that people's honesty is now changing and people are not honest. So now he came to the decision that a person won't be given the option of being asked whether he meant 1 or 3. If he uttered 3 from his tongue, that's it. 3 will be classified as 3 and that will be given. So the Ibn Abbas mentions that obviously during the time of Sayyidina Umar Farooq, he wasn't the only Sahabi left and all the rest had passed away. But all the prominent Sahaba who were there, none of them objected to this and they were all unanimous on this verdict, and they all also utilized and passed the same verdict. So who are we today in today's time to say no, 3 divorces equals, in one gathering equals 1? And if Sayyidina Umar Farooq made it up from his own side, took it out from his own pocket, where were all other Sahaba? The Sahaba who were willing to give their lives for the truth, who wouldn't, even if Umar Farooq stood up and said something wrong, they wouldn't let him go. Although they feared him so much, they wouldn't let him go. On one occasion, Sayyidina Umar Farooq, when he wanted to stipulate a fixed amount for meher, from the mimbar, a lady who was there in the gathering stood up and said, O Mu'min, what rights do you have when Allah has kept it open? What rights do you have to stipulate it? She kept quiet. So even a woman at that time overpowered Sayyidina Umar Farooq, and obviously she spoke the truth and he accepted the truth. So on this occasion also Sayyidina Umar Farooq, if he had done anything wrong, spoken wrong, the Sahaba would have mentioned it and he would have accepted it. So 3 talaqs equal 3. So فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ, if you divorced her, meaning for the third, she is not halal for him مِن بَعْدُ, after that, حَتَّى تَنْكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ, until she do not do nikah with another person. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا, if he then divorces her, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا, then there is no harm upon the two, أَن يَتَرَاجَعَا, that they get back together. However, this is in zanna, if they think أَن يُقِيمَ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ, that they can establish the law of Allah. Not that now they just get together for the sake of being together, but on that condition that now they know that they made a mistake and they can make things work out and they truly love each other so much that they want to get together, then only should they get together. Otherwise she goes her own way and he should go his own way. وَتِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ يُبَيِّنُهَا لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, these are the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يُبَيِّنُهَا, which Allah mentions it openly, clearly mentions it, لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ, for those people who know. Wherein Allah Ta'ala mentions here at the end of this ruling, these are the boundaries, these are the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يُبَيِّنُهَا, which He makes bayan of. And the word yubayyinu, bayan means to clarify, to open. We take it on the literal meaning bayan, as in our custom bayan means a talk. The reason why a talk is bayan is because when a person makes bayan, when he mentions something, he opens something you didn't know. Information, he opens it up to you. You were that close, your mind was closed to it, now your mind is open to it. So here also yubayyinuha means where Allah clearly, openly mentions it, but for who? لِقَوْمِ يَعْلَمُونَ, for those who have knowledge. For those who want to learn knowledge and those who have knowledge, for them Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly and openly mentions these boundaries, indicating that it's very, very important a person educates himself and that a person sticks to the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I mentioned, this is what happens when a person now divorces his wife and now he knows he makes a mistake. This is when people now start transgressing and they go beyond the boundaries of Allah. The boundaries are straightforward: do not divorce your wife at all. If matters are so severe and become so bad that now you have to divorce, just give her 1 divorce. After that also give her 2 divorces and leave it to that, let her go or take her back. Don't let it reach 3 divorces, and if 3 are given, then you can't get together at all, but besides halala. These are the boundaries that Allah has given us. Now there will be those who might want to get together without halala. There will be those now who don't accept divorce took place. There are those who will change whatever the events that took place. There will be those who will go around looking for various different types of fatwas, and there will be those who will then go to other people who will then tell them, no, never mind, 3 equals 1. So you'll find, and honestly, you will get such somewhere or the other where somebody will give a verdict. A few months ago, or not too long ago, there was a case of somebody who had divorced his wife once in the past, twice in the past, and on all these occasions he had told me, he was in contact with me, that he had divorced her. And then for the third time also he divorced her. And when he divorced her for the third time, he knew himself that now it's over. And he even phoned me not long after that to ask whether or not, and he knew himself, and I said yes, for sure. A few hours went by and he asked again that is there any other ruling or any other imam or somebody who there might be some other interpretation, is it according to all imams, whatever. I said, any imam you want. So according to Allah and His Rasul, never mind any other imam. Fair enough, that's fine. So he said, we have to separate in these type of things. Yes, you have to separate. And then he phoned again saying the family are all upset and these type of things. I said, obviously, you're expecting parties, party poppers and things like that. What do you expect? I mean, now he's regretting these. For quite a while went by and I had no contact from him. And then it so happened that I heard from some other people that they're still living together. After which I did get in touch with him, to which he said that there is somewhere in London a council or somewhere, Shari council or whatever, where he's put his case forward to, and he was just waiting for the reply from there. That whatever the reply he would get from there, that's what he would accept. Now, obviously, I had given my verdict. I had even given him a few phone numbers and contacts of others that he could also ask, just to make sure. Maybe he thinks if I've got it wrong, then maybe ask others. At least you might feel at least a bit at ease then. And you won't believe it or not. And his case, which he himself, and wasn't anybody illiterate. He wasn't alim anything, but he had a good knowledge of hadith and things. He was well learned himself. So in the back of his mind also, he knew that divorce should take place according to all imams, even if you don't follow one imam, according to everybody else. And he wasn't 3 divorces together, he was separate also. He knew all these things, but for some reason or the other, he was waiting for a reply from this, I don't know which department, who the Mufti there was. He even said and told his friends also, if they say it's over, then he'll accept if it's over, whatever. And it so happened for somehow or the other, they returned saying that no, they can still stay together. Now his case, at all 3 times he divorced his wife, it so happened that he had contacted me, so I knew exactly what was happening and under what conditions and what he gave divorce. And there was no way at all that any person could come out, even taking any other imam or whatever, any excuse, any reason for talaq not to have taken place. But somehow or the other, these people, whoever they were, found a reason for talaq not to take place. Some of his other friends who were, mashallah, also not alims or anything at all, but also knew what was happening, they actually, dear friends, boycotted him. Till now they boycotted him because they know in their minds that he's doing what he's done is wrong, and they know that he's living with his wife incorrectly. At the end they tried to explain to him, but then they said it's up to him, and they've actually boycotted him for this. And it so happens because obviously now he regrets, and the love that takes over person, and now he's living with his wife in this manner. But the matter is that how he found somebody, from all the people, he found somebody, and there was somebody who even gave the verdict that they said halal for each other, wherein there could be no excuse whatsoever, wherein it could be justified in this manner. And you might say, okay, look for some point or other, maybe some other imam has said something, so okay, you go according to that imam, but here there was absolute nothing at all, no reason whatsoever, wherein knowingly he was saying, he wasn't even angry, or those might say, okay, anger overpowered him, he wasn't insane, he wasn't drunk, he wasn't false. The matter was straightforward, they were having a lot of problems, and he issued a divorce knowingly, but then also he got the verdict wherein divorce did not take place. This is where Allah Ta'ala says, Tilka hududullah. These are the boundaries of Allah, the laws of Allah, you know how, which He clearly mentions it to you. لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ, for those who know and those who obviously adhere to these type of things. So this is very, very important, that we learn and educate ourselves with these very, very important issues, take heed from it also, and not fall into the trap which other people do. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all and give us all, and include us also from لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ, those who know and those who understand. The verse of talaq still carry on for a few more verses anyway.